Is Call of Duty Zombies too casual friendly? This is a conversation that's been brought up quite a lot over the past couple of years, ever since Black Ops Cold War Zombies really pushed zombies in a very different direction for the franchise, centered around accessibility and making the game playable for as many players as humanly possible. And with Black Ops 6 Zombies still continuing many of the Black Ops Cold War Zombies features that made the game more accessible and casual, I thought this would be a good time to talk about how I feel about this. Do I think it's a good thing to make it more casual friendly? Do I think it's a bad thing, or is it a more nuanced conversation than that? And of course, as it usually is for these conversations, yes, it is a more nuanced conversation. It is not simply a full-on good or full-on bad thing that Zombies is more casual friendly now. But before we get into that discussion, I want to just go through the history of Call of Duty Zombies and why they decided that they needed to do this big turn with Black Ops Cold War into turning the game as casual friendly as humanly possible. So Call of Duty Zombies started off as something that, in my opinion, was very casual friendly. World at War, even Black Ops 1, and most of Black Ops 2, you could easily just load into the map without any guides, without looking up anything, just going in to shoot zombies, and you could do that just fine without any problems whatsoever. Obviously, if you want to take the next step and do an Easter egg or do some sort of other harder thing like a high round run, you're probably not going to be able to do that as a casual player, but it is still something you could attempt to do if you want to become a more hardcore fan. But casuals never really complained because they didn't really want to do that stuff anyways, or they just didn't know about it. Like, there's many casual players that probably don't even know that you can get the Wunderwaffe on Call of the Dead if you do the Easter egg. I'm sure many people have no idea that Easter egg even exists. The second Zombies started to get a little bit harder for the average player, I would say, happened in Black Ops 2. I would even argue in Transit. I know some would say it was Mob of the Dead where it started, but Transit to me is a map that is definitely not casual friendly. Casuals loved it because they loved the chaos of it. They loved how crazy it got, but they never actually got that far in the map. Casuals weren't actively getting Pack-a-Punch every game because of how difficult it was to get Pack-a-Punch without problem. They obviously weren't doing the Easter egg, so it was just one of those things where they just liked how chaotic it was. They didn't really care about doing everything on the map. Mob of the Dead, for some reason, is the first map where I feel like there starts to be a problem here with casual audiences and the map itself, where they're having trouble getting the Pack-a-Punch, and it's something that they really want to do on the map. For some reason, it didn't affect most people on Transit, I feel like, but once you got to Mob of the Dead, you can clearly see there's a lot of things that are hidden on this map in order to get Pack-a-Punch. Now, I personally don't think it's nearly as not casual friendly as people say. I think you could figure out a lot of this stuff just by trying it out and doing different experimentation with the Afterlife mode. I think it's definitely very possible to figure this stuff out without a guide. It's just the fact that a lot of casuals likely gave up before they can even try to figure it out in the first place. And then that extends to maps like Origins, where if they wanted to get the wonder weapons on the map, chances are they probably weren't going to be able to fully upgrade them. They could definitely get the stabs on their own. I feel like they weren't that hard to get on their own. It is something you can definitely stumble across and get into, but if you wanted to upgrade them to go to that next stage, you probably weren't going to do that without a guide. And casuals fully could look up guides. It's not like they can't do that. It's just the fact that a lot of them didn't want to do that, or just refused to do that, or had no idea those upgrades existed in the first place. Now, this is not me complaining about those maps. I absolutely love Mob of the Dead and Origins to death, and I don't actually have an issue with them having the maps be set up like that at all. I actually kind of prefer how those maps are set up, but we can't forget about the fact that it does negatively impact some players, because if they're not able to figure out certain things, if they're not able to do certain things on the map, and the map is actively pushing them in ways to try to solve those things, then it might frustrate some players. As I said before, lots of casuals might have no idea that the Wunderwaffe exists on Call of the Dead, because there's nothing in the game telling them that the Wunderwaffe exists on that map. It is just something you just randomly get when you complete the Easter egg. Of course, you get it every time you kill George after completing the Easter egg for the first time. But in a map like Origins, there's literally a whole HUD screen when you press the back button in your inventory that shows you different parts. And if a player sees those different parts and they have absolutely no idea how to get them, it might frustrate them. Now, I'm not saying it should or shouldn't frustrate them, because at the end of the day, I don't think these players necessarily need to have everything on the map in order to succeed on the map, but at the end of the day, it might affect many players because they see stuff that they know they can't get because they have no idea how to figure out how to get it. And then we get to Shadows of Evil in Black Ops 3. I'm not going to talk about Exozombies. I don't really feel like that is relevant to our conversation here, but Black Ops 3's Shadows of Evil, I feel like was the first map where I heard the most amount of complaints in regards to zombies being too complicated. And to this day, I don't really understand it because I actually feel like most of what this map gives you is pretty obvious. It kind of just tells you exactly what you need to do when you enter beast mode. It tells you to zap objects that have that glowing zap mark on it, and then of course you can grapple on objects that also have that little symbol on it. It's pretty obvious to me, but at the same time, did it take a while to figure out the first time I did it? Yes. And many casual players might not care to play enough to the point where they're gonna be able to figure this stuff out. They want to hop in, pack-a-punch their weapons, and do everything on the map within the first game, whereas a player like myself is totally fine with taking multiple games to learn it because I have the time for that. At the end of the day, I do feel like it just comes down to what you're playing zombies for. Are you playing just to simply kill zombies, or are you playing for more than that? Are you playing for the exploration and the ability to hunt for things and solve things? And if you're not playing for that, well then yeah, you're probably going to prefer that the map just gives you everything right off the bat so you can just hop in to just kill zombies. And I'd say the rest of the Black Ops 3 maps were relatively easy in terms of getting Pack-a-Punch. I don't think there was really many problems there. Like Rise and Rock, you literally just press X on 2 things around the map. That cannot be considered not casual friendly. And people out there saying that Pack-a-Punch quests in Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 are just too complicated. Most of the maps, they're not complicated at all. Casual players should be able to figure this stuff out. The game is literally like giving it to them. But when you extend it to other things like the wonder weapons, for example, trying to get the upgraded bows on DE, yeah, that is probably not going to be something someone's going to figure out without a guide. Again, casuals fully have the capability of looking up guides. Some people act like casuals don't have access to the internet or something. Most of them do, right? So they can easily look up a guide on Google. It takes 2 minutes. But are they going to want to do that? Probably not. A lot of them do not care to do that. A lot of them just want to jump in and get everything right off the bat. And I get that, but at the same time, that's just not how all video games are made. And I think that's okay. And then we get to Black Ops 4 Zombies, and I feel like this game really pushed a lot of things in the casual friendly direction. A lot of people will tell you that Black Ops 4 is the least casual friendly COD to date, and I think that's just a crazy thing to say. It doesn't really make any sense to me because they actively tried a lot of things to make the game more casual friendly. Some things worked, some things didn't work. The only thing in this game that is not casual friendly is of course the Easter eggs, which those have really never been casual friendly. Those have always been made for the hardcore fan base. So I don't really think that adds into the conversation whatsoever, just because they're a lot harder than usual. But they're still not ever been casual friendly, at least in my opinion. I don't think any Easter egg in COD Zombies before Cold War was really all that casual friendly, aside from the Final Reich's casual quest, of course. But Black Ops 4 really simplified a lot of things for the casual player. Obviously, specialists, you didn't have to do a quest to unlock them anymore. You just got them right off the bat, which I personally didn't like that, but that was definitely something for the casual fan base. They also made the Pack-a-Punch quests way more simplified. I would say maybe 1 or 2 of the maps in Black Ops 4 have a little bit of a harder Pack-a-Punch quest, but majority of them are very easy. A map like 9, you literally just go around the map and press X on 4 things, and then that's it. You have to kill a couple bosses too. Like, it's really not that hard. Voyage of Despair is also just pressing X on 4 things around the map. These aren't hard Pack-a-Punch quests whatsoever. Also, the wonder weapons were put in the box on a majority of Black Ops 4's maps. Not every map, but majority of them, you can get the wonder weapon straight out of the box. They did have quests alongside it if you want to get it directly, but if you wanted to get it out of the box, you could do that on most of the maps. So you're not going to have a situation like Rise and Rock where casual fans might not know how to upgrade the bows. Now, if you want the Kraken or the Sekret's Kiss, you just get it out of the box and then you can just go Pack-a-Punch it. It's really not that complicated. They also added custom mutations, which a lot of people complain about custom mutations because obviously you couldn't do Easter eggs in them or level up. And I agree, those were definitely problems with custom mutations. But when you really think about what was custom mutations made for, I can't even tell you how many times I have had someone say to me that all they care about in zombies is just shooting zombies. They just want that casual fun of hopping into a map and trying to get to as high ground as possible with shooting zombies. They don't care about leveling up. They don't care about camos. They don't care about Easter eggs, and none of that matters to them. So custom mutations is literally made for that player. Now, obviously the issue here is that I think most casual fans didn't even know that custom mutations existed. I think Treyarch should have done a better job at advertising it and also showing it off in the game itself. It should have been something that, you know, when you first load up the game, have it like pop up on the screen. Do you want to play a more casual centered focused game or something like that to play custom mutations? They should have had a whole thing built for it, but I feel like they just didn't actively advertise it, and a casual fan's not going to spend the time to go through and change all the different settings in the custom mutations mode. They're not going to do that, but if you wanted to, you could. And yes, I think that was very much built for casual fans. But majority of these things pushing in the direction of being more casual friendly didn't really ruin Black Ops 4, at least for me personally, because I still feel like the game had a lot of things for the hardcore player. You had so much for a fan of hardcore zombies. If you wanted to do really difficult and complex Easter eggs, every single map, well, most of the maps have that. 7 of the 8 maps in this game have really in-depth Easter egg quests that are incredibly fun. Not all of them are fun, to be honest, but most of them are pretty fun and very complex. So if you want that extra layer of difficulty, you have that. If you want the extra side Easter eggs that give you unique rewards you can't get anywhere else, you have that. A map like Dead of the Night has that. Toten has plenty of unique rewards for different side quests. There's plenty of stuff map to map, plenty of new things to learn, plenty of secrets, and that's what gives it that hardcore edge to it, even though a lot of the mechanics and features are built for casual fans. And this is where I feel like Black Ops Cold War Zombies really missed the mark, because they went so far into the casual friendly direction, but they kind of forgot about hardcore fans in the process. There really isn't enough to that game that is built for hardcore fans. There isn't enough that's meant for hardcore fans. It felt like the game has such a low barrier to entry, which isn't really a bad thing, but there was not much beyond that. There was not much to master in the game. There wasn't much to spend a lot of time on other than just the usual grinding. And a lot of these elements are unfortunately bleeding over into Black Ops 6 Zombies, but not all of them, and we'll talk about that later. But let's just talk about some of these elements that Black Ops Cold War basically started, or at least made a lot more into the casual friendly direction. First things first, the bigger focus on camo and weapon level grinding. Now, that in and of itself is not a bad thing, obviously. I don't mind that there's a camo grind in the game. I don't mind that there's weapon leveling. What I mind is when certain systems and mechanics are almost built around that grind itself, and I feel like this is most evident in Modern Warfare Zombies. Modern Warfare Zombies felt like it was almost designed to waste your time in a sense, where you had so many different things to grind for, a lot of which were RNG centric, just in order to get people to play the game more, to get through a bunch of pointless rewards. To be honest, most of the rewards through those different challenges were kind of pointless, all to just get one big reward in the end, which is actually the only reward out of all of them that people actually care about. So it's just this long grind to get through, which honestly most casuals probably aren't even getting to the end of it anyways, but are they at least trying to as they play? Yeah, probably, and they're probably having fun with it, and that's totally fine if they are having fun with it. But my point is that the rest of the game felt like it lacked in a bunch of different areas. It lacked in depth because it was relying so heavily on those specific grinds that the game has. And that's what worries me about Liberty Falls in Black Ops 6 Zombies. I don't think the map is going to be this, but a lot of people have been describing it as the camo grinding map. And that is like the most backhanded compliment to ever give a map ever, because a map that is built for camo grinding is just terrible in my opinion. I think that sounds awful, unless it is of course like a side mode like Onslaught, which yes, of course, I feel like Onslaught is definitely built to just be a grinder, and I'm fine with that. That's not really a problem. But when it's a main map that's going to have an Easter egg, side Easter eggs, that map should not be built around the camo grind whatsoever. It should just be an extra element that you can do on the map, but the map shouldn't tailor your experience around that grind, which like I said, I don't think it will. Another thing Cold War started was a much easier and faster map setup, where the progression was kind of linear and quite simple. I feel like all of Cold War's progression is just getting a bunch of points, getting a bunch of salvage, and then just using it to either upgrade your armor, upgrade your rarities, upgrade your weapon through the Pack-a-Punch, and that's pretty much it. There's like not much beyond that. And I would definitely call that a pretty linear sense of progression, where you're just going through the rounds, and especially with this new point system, you're not really doing anything specific to get points faster. You're just killing the zombies and just getting stuff from them. That's kind of it. Whereas you look at a map like Shadows of Evil, the progression on the map is very, very different. So you start off going around the map trying to complete all 4 of the rituals, and to get all 4 of the rituals done, you need to get specific items that you use beast mode with to get them. And then you get the items, you go to the rituals one at a time, and then you go to the final ritual in the Pack-a-Punch room to unlock Pack-a-Punch. But you're not done there. Now you have to go look around the map to find 3 different symbols by taking the tram around, and then you unlock an egg. You have to use this egg to fill up zombie souls all around the map in 4 different locations, and then you finally get your sword. But now you can get that sword and now upgrade it by going around the map and doing 4 Margwa rituals, and after that you finally get your upgraded sword. And you have many other things you can do. You can also upgrade your little Arnies through a different quest. You can upgrade your trip mines if you feel like doing that. You can get the Margwa helmet. There's just so many different things involved in the progression on that map. And many other Black Ops 3 and 4 maps are similar in that sense. Also, Infinite Warfare has a lot of different progression systems too. But you look at Cold War, you just don't have that many options. And if you do have any options for progression, most of them aren't really necessary because you can just get this stuff in another way. Like, for example, there's a Perkaholic side Easter egg on Forsaken, which I have no reason to ever do because you could simply just buy all the perks yourself through the Wonder Fizz, so why would I spend this time doing the side Easter egg if there's no need to do it? Like, what would be the point of doing the spider bait Easter egg on Zetsubo no Shima if you could just get the spider bait through the mystery box or something? Why would I bother doing it? I could just randomly get it through the mystery box. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, it takes away the importance of such an item. It takes away the fun of going for it if you can just get it through different means. Now, I'm not saying I have a problem with wonder weapons or certain items being easily accessible through the mystery box or through other things, but there just have to be more on top of it. You have to give us more options for progression beyond that, and that's what Black Ops 3 and 4 gave us. And I think the important thing a lot of people miss out on is that most of these progression systems in Black Ops 3 and 4 are optional. I've always heard a lot of people say that these games aren't casual friendly because there's so many things you have to do. There's so much to the setup. But there really isn't, because not all of it is required. Now, of course, if you're doing the Easter egg, then some of it is required. Like a lot of those steps I talked about with the sword are required if you're doing the Easter egg on Shadows of Evil. But if you just wanted to play Shadows of Evil for fun, you just wanted to mess around, all you really have to do is the Pack-a-Punch quest. And that's kind of it. I mean, maybe you want to get the Apothecary Servant, which is very easy to get. That's kind of a passive progression system where you just wait for the parts to drop, essentially. Like, that's a very easy one to do. You don't really have to do anything specific for it. But having those options means so much to a hardcore player because there's so much more to do on each map. That is absolutely huge. Obviously, there's other systems in Black Ops Cold War Zombies that they implemented that are definitely meant for casuals, like the loadout system, the rarity system, and the armor system. You might be questioning the rarity system, how is that made for casual fans? But I think it definitely is, because essentially what that system did is it made every gun viable even when you're not pack-a-punching them, which I feel like I don't actually like that. As much as I like every gun being viable eventually after pack-a-punching, I think some guns should just be complete shit before being pack-a-punched, kind of like how they were in older zombies. Because what this means is, let's say you only have enough points for one box hit, and you hit that box, and you get a weapon. I liked how in older zombies modes, you might get a really shitty weapon and then you're kind of like almost screwed. Like, you ever have that feeling on like a Black Ops 1 or Black Ops 2 map where you get a really bad gun out of the box for your one hit and you're on a pretty far round at this point, so you know you're kind of screwed. You're like, oh my god, what am I gonna do now? Like, this is a frightening situation I'm now in. But in Cold War, no matter what gun you get out of that box, it's gonna do you just fine. I mean, you probably won't even hit the box in the first place because of the loadout system, but still, whatever gun you get, you're gonna do just fine. Like, you're not gonna have trouble. You're not gonna hit the box, get an SMG and be like, oh no, this SMG is gonna really make it harder for me. No, it's not. It's perfectly fine. It's gonna kill zombies just fine. That to me takes away a lot of the tension and vulnerability that you used to have in older zombies. Armor was obviously a way for them to simplify the shield system, which I feel like the shield system was never that complex in the first place. It was just go around the map, pick up 3 parts, and boom, you're good. Like, I feel like it was a very simple thing, but I guess some people didn't like that they had to find parts, so now you just have to go up to the machine, get the armor, and I guess in BO6 you just have to get it off the wall. And I mean, I'm not like that against armor as much as other people are. I'm really against them turning into being it more like Warzone where you have to actually play it yourself. I actually don't mind it as much in Cold War where it just automatically equips to your person. But I do think it definitely makes the game a lot easier as well. And it's just a way for them to simplify certain mechanics, which I don't think needed to be simplified. And then the loadouts obviously are a no-brainer. It's letting you spawn in with any gun you want. That obviously is made for casual fans, and could also be said that that system is kind of built around the camo grind and weapon leveling, because if you want to weapon level a specific weapon, you're probably going to like the loadout system because it's going to conveniently let you immediately use that gun right off the rip. The next element that I feel like Cold War definitely made more casual friendly is making certain map mechanics and features continue map to map rather than being like map specific. And what I mean by this is, I feel like in the past there was a lot more mechanics and features on maps that would only be on one map. Like, you would have a certain full-on mechanic that would only happen on one map. Like, for example, the Afterlife feature on Mob of the Dead or the Beast Mode on Shadows of Evil. These are things that were just on one map, where I feel like in Cold War, and probably now even in BO6, there's going to be a lot more things that carry over map to map. And I used to think this was probably because of a lack of development time for Cold War, but because BO6 might be continuing a lot of that, maybe not completely, but in certain ways, I feel like this is more to do with them trying to make the game more casual friendly by making the maps more similar because they don't want players to feel like they have to learn a bunch of new systems each time a new map comes out. Like, for example, if you were playing Black Ops 2 and you were able to master Die Rise or Transit, when Mob of the Dead comes out, mastering Die Rise and Transit is not going to mean anything because Mob of the Dead has completely new systems and mechanics that make it definitely feel like its own map, almost like it's part of its own game. But, you know, as a casual fan, you might be kind of not liking it too much because there's so many new systems you have to learn. Whereas in Cold War, Malware to Totem comes out, what new systems are you trying to learn? Not really anything. I mean, there's really not that many new things to that map. Obviously, there's, you know, new Easter eggs and stuff like that, and there's obviously new wonder weapons, and there's some new bosses, but overall, you're kind of just learning this. It's kind of the same game. Like, it's the same stuff. You're still using the same rarity system, the same loadout system, the same armor system. Everything's kind of similar, right? There's not many new mechanics that they're throwing into the map that you're trying to learn for the first time. And I think this definitely does hurt the game quite a bit because it just makes the maps feel too similar to each other. I kind of love how Black Ops 2, 3, 4, Infinite Warfare, even in some senses like Exo Zombies and World War II, not as much because I feel like those games definitely had some issues with the maps feeling kind of similar, but at least definitely those Black Ops games I mentioned, Infinite Warfare, they feel very different map to map, like completely. But when you get to Cold War, there's just too many things that carry over map to map. A good example is the Trials system. This system that they had on every single Cold War map where you go up to the machine and you get a challenge out of it, and then you have to complete the challenge and it gives you some sort of reward, right? And you can keep doing them to get better rewards. I like that system, don't get me wrong, but the fact that the system is the exact same map to map, it even looks the exact same. The machine itself is the exact same map to map. Doesn't that kind of take away the unique feel of it? I mean, go back to Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare. Those maps had different challenge systems map to map. You had a map like Origins that had the challenge chest where you have 4 different challenges and then you can do either any of them at any time you want and then you get a reward from it. And then of course you go to Black Ops 3 and you have Zetsubo no Shima, which I would say was kind of similar to Origins system, but it looked different. Like, it was a whole different design in terms of how it looks. Garad Krovi and Revelations were like the only maps where I feel like they had very similar looking challenge trial things, but they still somewhat looked different enough to the point where I think it gave it some personality. Then you go to Infinite Warfare, you have the Neil challenges, which work very different than the challenges on Raven the Redwoods, which work very different than the challenges on Shaolin Shuffle with the Chi abilities. Black Ops 4 also has quite a bunch of unique systems for each of their maps when it comes to the challenges, and just in general, these games before Cold War just had way more map unique features, and I really do think this was an attempt to push the game in more of a casual direction in order to make all the maps feel a bit more similar, so when players come back to them, they don't feel like they have to relearn a whole new map. And then of course there's the topic of Easter eggs, which was definitely one of my biggest issues with Black Ops Cold War. They decided to make the Easter eggs a lot more casual friendly, which on one hand I can understand why they did that, because obviously they want more people to do these Easter eggs because there's a lot of work that goes into designing and making these Easter eggs, especially when you talk about all the boss fights. So they wanted more players to do them. I understand that. But don't ruin it for the hardcore fans by just taking the Easter egg experience and making it way too easy, way too simple, and lacking in depth almost completely. That was such a big problem with that game for me, which definitely was an example of them moving further and further into the casual friendly direction. Now, as I said before, Black Ops 6 is trying to fix a lot of these problems that Cold War brought up, which is a good thing. And one of the best examples is with the Easter eggs. They have already come out and said that the Easter eggs are going to be harder than Cold War. Now, we don't really know the extent of that though. I'm going to have to see for myself, of course, to judge it, because for all we know, it could just be like a little harder, maybe not a lot harder. I want them to be more on the level of Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4's Easter eggs. Will they go that far? Probably not, realistically speaking. But if they're at least harder and more in depth than Cold War, then I think we're at least on the right track. I think the guided mode is definitely a good indication that they actually are going to make them a lot harder, because of the fact that, well, now you're going to have a lot of casual fans that if they wanted to actually just straight up do the Easter egg without any trouble whatsoever, they can just play that guided mode and not have any problems, so they can make sure that they make the main Easter eggs as hard and as complex as humanly possible. Now, are they going to go that far? Again, probably not, but at least further than what Cold War was. They've also come out and said that they want Black Ops 6 to be harder just in general, like not even just for the Easter eggs. They want the overall gameplay to be harder too. Now, obviously, seeing a bunch of Warzone streamers at COD Next get to round 50 on Liberty Falls very easily is definitely not a good indication for the overall difficulty of this game, but perhaps that is just a Liberty Falls specific issue, and Terminus will be a lot harder, which I'd be okay with that. I don't mind one of the maps being a lot easier and the other one being a lot harder, but I feel like the mechanics themselves are probably what's making it easier. And remember, that this is without stuff like the augment system. They weren't even using augments in their build of the game, and they were still able to get to some really far rounds without any trouble whatsoever. So imagine how much easier the game's going to be with all these upgrades on your perks and items. Like, I don't know, I'm a little worried for the difficulty, and I'm also worried with how they're going to try to solve that, because I do think they are listening to the community. They do want to make the game harder because a lot of people have been asking for that, but I'm not really a fan of how Treyarch has attempted to make the game harder over the past couple years, because they've been doing it within one specific way, and it's simply just making the zombies faster and more aggressive. That is their way of making the game harder, and in my opinion, that's the worst way to make the game harder, at least one of the worst ways. They did this with Black Ops Cold War's Rampage Inducer, which was their solution to make the game harder, since a lot of people were complaining even when Black Ops Cold War was out that the game was just too easy. And Rampage Inducer, I don't have a problem with its existence, it's just I don't think it's a great solution to making the game harder, because first of all, it only lasts for the first 20 rounds, and it just makes the zombies faster and more aggressive. That's not really a fun way to make the game harder, at least in my personal opinion. This is the same thing Modern Warfare Zombies does, which I do like how Modern Warfare Zombies is definitely a lot more challenging than some of the recent Zombies modes, because I would say it definitely is. If you're going into tier 3 zones, you're going into the Dark Ether, there's a lot of challenging moments in MWZ, a lot more than people give it credit for. I think some people who were saying it's too easy, they were just chilling in the tier 1 and tier 2 zones. So obviously those zones are really easy, but when you get into the harder places, there is some challenging moments in MWZ. But it's just centered around the zombies being a lot more aggressive and just hitting faster and stuff like that. And I personally just don't think that's the best way to make zombies more challenging, because it's not how zombies made itself more challenging back in the past. A lot of the more challenging moments in prior Zombies modes were built around how the maps were designed. The maps that usually were easier were the ones that were more open. Like a map like Ascension was a lot easier because there was so much open space for you to roam around and train. But when you had a map like Shangri-La, it was a lot harder because it's a lot more close quarters. Therefore, obviously it's going to be harder to train around. Therefore, the zombies are probably going to have an easier time to try to kill you. I also really like how prior Zombies maps, you started off very vulnerable. You started off with basically nothing, and you had to work your way up to the better items. And obviously Cold War just wasn't like that, because obviously you had these permanent upgrades on your characters, so you already were spawning with all these really overpowered things. You can literally spawn with a Bowie knife every single game in Cold War. Like, that's very OP. You can get whatever gun you want to start off with, even if it's gray rarity, you're still spawning with it. So there's basically no vulnerable moments in the early rounds of Cold War, and that's what I feel like I missed from that game more than anything. I'm hoping BO6 has more moments like that. I'm glad they got rid of permanent upgrades and they went with the augment system instead. That's definitely going to make the character less overpowered at the start, at least, but I still feel like it might have some similar issues to Cold War, because you're still starting off with whatever gun you want. So I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go in practice, but I am definitely worried about it. So all in all, is Call of Duty Zombies too casual friendly today? I'm going to say yes for the most part, but there are still lots of opportunities for them to implement things that aren't casual friendly. And I think obviously MWZ showed that quite a bit, even though, like I said, the difficulty of it wasn't necessarily the type of difficulty I like. There still is a lot of elements to that game that are definitely not casual friendly. And I hope BO6 is going to go to those extents as well, with having a lot of things that are extremely built for the hardcore fans. I think having a low barrier to entry is perfectly fine, as long as the game has enough things to it that are built for hardcore fans, and there's a lot of extra rewards and a lot of extra things you can work towards that will take a lot of knowledge and skill in order to achieve. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a comment in the comment section down below as how you feel about this topic, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Peace out.